I'm sure the responses to this title and this thumbnail are going to be completely normal, not unhinged at all, and definitely respectful of other people's opinions. As you've likely heard by now, the Mariners ownership has decided to move forward with Jerry Dipoto as president of baseball operations for 2025, so next year, and potentially beyond, sources have told the Seattle Times. There's been a lot of back and forth on whether or not Jerry Dipoto should be fired after this season, and honestly, does he deserve to even be the president of baseball operations going into 2025? I'm not really sure, but I'm going to try to break it down in this video and break down just what Jerry Dipoto can bring to this team. Ultimately, I'm fine with this. I was kind of indifferent on whether or not Jerry would be the GM or president of baseball operations or whatever, because honestly, Jerry Dipoto is not the root of the problem. The root of the problem, obviously, we all know this, is the ownership. And the fact that Jerry Dipoto is allowed to stay here for 2025 means he's doing the job that they're asking him to do. He is dealing with the financial constraints that are being given to him by ownership and making a contender for the Seattle Mariners. I tweeted that I'm okay with this because I want to see the hitters that Jerry was able to draft over the past few years come to the big leagues. That'll probably start in 2025. And I got a pretty interesting response. This comment here says, he's been there for 9 years. How many more prospect classes do you want to see? And I think this is where the misconception of Jerry Dipoto's tenure as a Mariners GM comes from. And I think rightfully so. Fact of the matter is, he's been here for 9 years. They have had one playoff appearance in those 9 years. Again, is that all Jerry's fault? No, a lot of it is ownership's fault, not allowing them to spend money. But let's just kind of break down Jerry's 9-year tenure with the Seattle Mariners and see, because in my opinion, and oh, Colton, you're a bootlicker. Oh, Colton, you're on the Mariners payroll. No, I'm not. I simply just prefer the way the Seattle Mariners are building their baseball team right now to the way that other teams have built their baseball teams in the past. Hate me for it or love me for it, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. The fact of the matter is, I am okay. Again, I'm not in love with it. I don't like, if the Mariners could go out there and get the Phillies, like, owner as like the owner for the Mariners instead, that would be the ultimate move because he loves baseball. He wants to see a winner. But Jerry Dipoto as a GM, I'm indifferent towards it because, again, he's hamstrung by the ownership. I'm not saying Jerry's perfect, and there are plenty of cons with him that we'll talk about here in a second, but let's just take a look through his 9 years with the Mariners and go from there. Jerry Dipoto became the general manager for the Seattle Mariners on September 28th of 2015. Very, very late in the year 2015. 2015, the Mariners ended 76 and 86, fourth in the American League West, and 12 games back of first place. This was the end of Jack Zarenzik's tenure with the Seattle Mariners. Jack Zarenzik became the Seattle Mariners general manager in October of 2008, so he was with the Seattle Mariners for about 7 years. And his first year of 2009 wasn't terrible. The Mariners went 85 and 77. They finished in third, again 12 games back, however, in the American League West. But 85 wins would be one of the highest win marks of Jack Zarenzik's tenure in Seattle. The following year, the Mariners lost 100 games. The year after that, they lost 95. They had not finished with a record above 500 after Jack Zarenzik was hired. So 2009, the first year he was here, Mariners finished over 500. They did not finish over 500 again until 2014, where the Mariners went 87 and 75, and they went 76 and 86 the very next year in 2015. Enter Jerry Dipoto in 2016, where the Mariners went 86 and 76, Jerry's first year with the Seattle Mariners. In 2016, the Mariners had a adjusted payroll total of about 100, let's call it 150 million, just for easy sake numbers here, and the Mariners were really paying just a few guys. Obviously, you look at the top 4 guys here. Felix was making nearly 26 million, 24 for Robbie Cano, 14 for Nelson Cruz, and 13.5 for Hisashi Iwakuma. Nearly half of their salary was split up amongst these 4 guys here. And because of that, the Mariners weren't really in much of a contention spot because a lot of their contracts were wrapped up right here. Now, in my opinion, what do we say about this? But Jerry Dipoto tried to make it work in 2016 with this team, and the team got really close to making the playoffs. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen for them in 2016. Again, Felix had started to fall off. Robinson Cano was pretty decent. Nelson Cruz looked really good for the Seattle Mariners. And Hisashi Iwakuma was probably on the tail end of his Mariners career. But nonetheless, the Mariners were still getting solid contributions from guys like Kyle Seager, who were only making $8 million that year. Looking now at the 2017 Mariners payroll, we look at the top 4 guys again. Hisashi Iwakuma is now gone. Kyle Seager is now making $11 million, and the Mariners also acquired Giovanni Gallardo, making $11 million. So all in all, the Mariners we'll just call it $161 million payroll, all was wrapped up in basically these 4 or 5 guys. That year, the Mariners went 78 and 84, a clear step back from their 86 and 76, where they finished second in the American League West. They were 23 games out of first place. 2018 rolled around and the Mariners lineup was actually looking pretty good, with D. Gordon leading off for the team, Gene Segura batting 2, Robbie Cano batting 3, Nelson Cruz batting 4, Kyle Seager batting 5, Ryan Healy 6, newly acquired Mitch Haniger in right field batting 7th, Mike Zunino behind the plate, and Guillermo Heredia in left field. Honestly, that seems like it should be a pretty solid team, right? The Mariners went out and acquired D. Gordon. They had gone out and acquired Gene Segura and Mitch Haniger in the year prior, and overall, the Mariners lineup was actually looking pretty good with the pieces they were dealt. They're trying to make it work with Felix and Robinson Cano and Nelson Cruz, the high payroll that they had. Unfortunately, it just fell short. In 2018, the Mariners would go on to finish 89-73, about a .550 win percentage, one of the highest records in this century for the Seattle Mariners at 89-73, and they still finished 14 games out of first place. Now here's where things change a lot with the Seattle Mariners, because in 2018 it was clear that Felix Hernandez had fallen off, Robinson Cano had been popped for PEDs, and Nelson Cruz was shortly on his way out of Seattle. The 2018 payroll is the highest in Mariners history, 6th in all of MLB in total cap allocations, with an adjusted payroll total of about $161 million again. Kyle Seager really started to make some solid money, making $19 million. Nelly was still making $14. Robinson Cano was making $24, although he didn't get paid all of that because of the PED suspension. Mike Leake was making $17 million. D. Gordon was making $11 million. Gene Segura was making $10. James Paxton making $5. Like, there was a lot of money being spent, but most of all, right up here in these top 5 or 6 guys. And because of that, you look towards the lower end of the Mariners roster that year, and it's really like who Zach Duke was on this team, Andrew Romine, like Cameron Maben. Bleh. Like, you look at the rest of these guys, and it's just not good. The Mariners did not have a good team other than these top like 5 or 6 guys. The supplementary guys were all struggling because all the Mariners had all their money wrapped up in here. But needless to say, the ownership had said, hey, you can run the highest payroll in this team's history and try to win with this team, and Jerry Dipoto did that. A lot changed going into 2019. The Mariners announced they were going to be going through a step back, not a rebuild, but a step back, because they needed to reset some of the allocations of money in this organization. Whether that came from payroll or from Jerry Dipoto, the fact of the matter is a lot of the money was wrapped up in guys approaching their 40s or guys that were no longer good, like Felix Hernandez had not been good. Robinson Cano popped for PEDs, and we saw how quickly he fell off. Nelson Cruz went on to have a few more years of relevance. Kyle Seager, again, was all right. His 2021 was incredible, but overall, I think that this was the right move. The Mariners needed to go into step back mode, and they needed to go out there and acquire some young guys that weren't making a ton of money. This was the right move, and the Mariners went into this knowing they needed to draft and develop some guys, and that is what they did. In 2019, the Mariners finished 68-94 with a .420 win percentage in 5th place, last place, and 39 games back. This was one of the worst years I can remember in Mariners history, but honestly, it didn't feel too bad. At the very beginning of Jerry Dipoto's tenure, he was kind of newer to the Mariners draft system, and he drafted guys like Kyle Lewis, Evan White, etc. And the next year in 2020, albeit the COVID year, Kyle Lewis won Rookie of the Year, and Evan White won a Gold Glove. Now, obviously, both these guys turned out to be nothing, but overall, mainly because of injuries, honestly, with those two guys, overall, the Mariners drafted those guys, developed them, and they did give them something on the field. 2020, it's a washed year. We don't even talk about 2020. But then we look ahead to 2021. The Mariners said, and Jerry Dipoto said, this is going to be like a 2 to 3 year step back. Okay, 2019 is 1. 2020 is like a half of a year of step back because obviously there were no minor league games. This really threw a wrench into the Mariners' plans, especially with a lot of their pitchers. They got pushed a year or so back. So we look at it, 2019 was the first year of that step back. 2020 we can call the second year, sort of, kind of, but it's weird. And then 2021, honestly, in my opinion, I thought was going to be, okay, this team's going to get a little bit better, but I'm not expecting anything. Mariners went out and finished 90-72. Their expected win-loss, their Pythagorean win-loss, was 468, below 500. The Mariners finished with a 556 in second place, 5 games back of the Houston Astros in 2021. They did the same thing in 2022, and this year they made the playoffs. They lost in the American League Division Series. The Mariners made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, again going 90-72. The next year they went 88-74, and obviously so far this year they're 70-70. But this 3-year span right here, from 2021 to 2023, is the second winningest period in Mariners history. The only time the Mariners have won more games in a 3-year period was from 2000 to 2002, obviously benchmarked by 116 wins in 2001. So the way that I look at it, 2016 to 2018, Jerry Dipoto was working with the roster that he was handed by Jack Zarenzek. Could he have traded off guys like Felix and Robinson Cano and whatnot in that time frame, sure, he could have in 2016 said, this is my team, I'm trading all these guys off. Would have left a terrible taste in the mouth of a team that had not made the playoffs in 20 years, a team that wanted to finally win, and they had what looked like to be the pieces to do it. Jerry Dipoto made the right move by trying to go all in with those rosters. When it was clear that wasn't going to work, he took the step back in 2019. 2020, and what I thought was going to be 2021 were supposed to be the step back years, with them peaking in 21, 22, 23. Well, as we saw, 21 was a pretty crazy year for the Mariners. They won 90 games, missed the playoffs by 1 game. What an incredible year. The vibes were really good. 2022, the Mariners make the playoffs. 2023, put a sour taste in everyone's mouth because they missed the playoffs by 2, or they missed winning the division by 2 games. But again, they won 88 games and had a winning percentage of .543. Solid year all around for the Mariners, just couldn't quite get the job done in 2023. That sucked. And now here we sit in 2024. Scott Servais has been fired. The Mariners have played poorly, are currently 4.5 games back of the division lead and 5.5 back of a wild card. The Mariners probably aren't making the playoffs in 2024. So what does that say? All of this being wrapped up, does Jerry Dipoto deserve to continue to be the Mariners general manager? Fact of the matter is he's only made the playoffs 1 time. 2020, I mean, who the hell knows? It was a Mickey Mouse year, but he only made the playoffs 1 time with this team in 9 years, and that is a problem. And not to mention all the other things that has come out of his mouth that have been bad. You know what I mean? Like the Lorena Martin stuff. We heard the 54%, etc. The list goes on and on. The most recent, obviously, being the firing of Scott Servais. I'm not saying that Jerry Dipoto is a good people person. He's very clearly not. But what I am saying is he knows what he's doing when it comes to building this team. The one thing that he lacks, which is pretty evident, is going out and acquiring guys that can hit in T-Mobile Park. It has not happened. Every single time he's gone out and acquired guys, they have been bad. For the most part. I mean, Victor Robles, of course, has been good, but for the most part, whenever he's gone out and made a trade or signed a free agent, they've been bad. But the Mariners are really good at drafting and developing, and that could be more on Scott Hunter, right? The Mariners draft guy. But we saw the whole Mariners rotation minus Luis Castillo has been drafted and developed by this team. Now, the Mariners have 8 prospects in the top 100, a few of which will probably make their debut in 2025, and I think that the guy that drafted them in Jerry Dipoto should be allowed to see that through. Because yes, he drafted Evan White and Kyle Lewis. Injuries got them. That sucks. He wasn't a great drafter in the first year or 2 with the Mariners. But ever since then, starting in like 2018 or so, the Mariners got really good at drafting and really good at developing. And they started the first wave with pitchers. They're now leading into the hitters, but the hitters just haven't gotten here yet. Don't get me wrong. Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, drafted or signed by the Mariners and developed. I think that it is pretty clear that the Mariners are good at that part of the game, and that I think Dipoto should be allowed to see the Cole Youngs, Harry Fords, etc. come up. I'm not saying the Mariners should extend him for a long period of time. I'm saying next year, or I'm saying 2025 and maybe 26 and done. Like if the hitters aren't hitting still, get rid of the guy. I'm done. I don't want to see his face ever again. But I think that it'd be too premature to fire the guy when you have a wave of offensive prospects coming with the best pitching staff in possibly the history of this team. The offensive players are coming. It sucks right now to be a Mariners fan. And I know you guys don't want to hear me say, oh, who ordered the Appuccino about the guy talking, saying, bootlicking for Jerry Dipoto. That's not what I'm doing. I'm simply saying that he, in my opinion, deserves another year or so because he's been hamstrung by the front office. We've heard it time and time again. Oh, the Mariners don't have as much money to spend as they thought they did. We heard it last year. The Mariners had to trade away certain guys because they didn't have the money to go out and acquire the guys they wanted. Then they did go out and acquire guys, and it didn't work. I think we all are in agreement that ownership is really the problem for the Seattle Mariners, but Jerry Dipoto being extended leaves a bad taste in people's mouth because of all the bad PR that's come out about him. And honestly, the fact of the matter is the Mariners, it feels like they've taken a step back in the past 2 years because honestly they have. They didn't make the playoffs the past 2 years. I get it. And I'm right there with you, and I just want to see this team make the playoffs, and ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. I just think that over the next year or two, we are going to see these prospects come up offensively and make a difference. Cole Young, Colt Emerson, Lazaro Montes, etc. I think that's what's going to happen. There's still a lot that needs to be done to this team this offseason. It needs to be reworked. The offense completely needs to be reworked. That is true. Only some guys should stay. Cal Raleigh, Julio, I don't even know, Victor. Like, only a few guys should stay. Everyone else should be gone. But nonetheless, Jerry Dipoto is here to stay for at least another year, and I guess that's something that we're going to have to deal with. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.